My fiancé has a family tradition of spending Sundays with his ex and son. I'm 32 years old and have been engaged to Anthony, 34, for about a year. We've been dating for 3 years. He has a 12-year-old son named Alex, and I get along well with both of them. Anthony and I also get along most of the time, and I usually feel comfortable with my role in the dynamic. However, Anthony and Alex have a peculiar tradition. Every Sunday, they get together and spend the day as a family, with Anthony's ex. Apparently, this tradition started before their divorce, and they decided to continue it. They have breakfast, watch movies, and spend the day together. Honestly, I think it's pretty weird. It's not that I feel insecure, but I can't understand why anyone would choose to spend an entire day every week with their ex. I mentioned to Anthony how strange I thought this was as soon as we started dating, but he explained that Alex really looks forward to these moments, so they kept the tradition. At first, I stayed in our room or the basement on Sundays, but I got tired of feeling trapped in my own house and started going out all day. Anthony never asked where I was going, nor did he seem to notice that I wasn't there. At first, I spent Sundays playing golf, running errands, or going to bars. But then I reconnected with an old friend, Ben. We dated for 5 years and remained good friends. Recently, he went through a divorce and moved into a new apartment. One Sunday, when I was planning to go to the movies, Ben invited me to his house. We spent the day together, smoked a little, watched movies, and cooked. It was a very relaxing time. Since then, this has become my Sunday tradition. Every Sunday, I go to Ben's house, and we spend the day together. I didn't feel the need to tell Anthony where I was, especially since he never asked or seemed to care. But yesterday, Ben stopped by our house to drop off my phone charger, which I had forgotten at his place. Anthony asked why Ben had my charger, and that's when he found out where I'd been spending my Sundays. He wanted to know why I was with Ben, and I explained that it was my Sunday meetup spot. Anthony was furious, saying it was rude of me not to tell him I was spending time with my ex. I couldn't help but laugh and pointed out the irony of him getting upset about me spending time with my ex while he does the same, every Sunday. With his ex, Anthony insisted it was different because he was honest about his relationship with his ex and that, if I had a problem with it, I should have said something. I reminded him that I'd already mentioned this before, but he said it was important for Alex, and I shouldn't interfere with the highlight of the kids' week just to make myself feel better. So, I started spending my Sundays elsewhere. Now, Anthony doesn't want me going to Ben's house anymore and told me to find another way to spend my Sundays. I told him that if we're going to follow these rules, then I don't want his ex coming over here on Sundays either. After our discussion, I thought Anthony would reflect on his hypocrisy, but he remained unyielding, saying I should stop seeing Ben and respect the boundaries of the relationship. That was the point when I decided I wouldn't accept this situation anymore. If he could maintain a tradition with his ex, I also had the right to have my own traditions with whoever I wanted. The next Sunday, as usual, Anthony was in the living room having breakfast with Alex while I was getting ready to leave. When I was at the door, Anthony came up to me and asked where I was going, as if he had just now decided to care. I looked directly at him and, without losing my calm, replied, "I'm going to Ben's house, as always." He got furious, trying to stop me, but I simply walked out. I spent the entire day with Ben, guilt-free, enjoying our peaceful routine. When I came back home in the evening, Anthony was sitting in the living room. This time, with his ex beside him. They both looked at me as if they had something to say. Anthony and his ex had decided that it would be better for me to distance myself from Alex because, according to them, my behavior wasn't a good example for him. At that moment, I felt something settle within me. It was obvious that the ex was taking advantage of the situation to push me away, and Anthony, like a puppet, agreed with everything without contesting. So, the solution is for me to stay away from your son and let you continue playing happy family, is that it? I asked, irritated. His ex flashed a satisfied smile, clearly feeling like she had one. That's when I realized how much she had always wanted me to be just a disposable piece in this story. And Anthony had allowed it. I stood up slowly and stared at him firmly. "You know what, Anthony? You can keep your Sundays and this illusion of family. I'm not going to fight for a place you never wanted me to have." I went upstairs to the bedroom and started packing my bags, determined to leave that house. Anthony tried to convince me to stay, saying that we could still work everything out, but I was tired of his excuses. He had already made his choice. And it wasn't me. As soon as I finished packing my things, I left without looking back. I texted Ben explaining everything. Within minutes, he replied saying I could stay with him until I got organized. Without hesitation, I left that house and went to Ben's. There, with a glass of wine in my hand, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The following months were liberating. I ignored all of Anthony's messages and continued my life with Ben. What started as a simple friendship evolved into a genuine, affectionate relationship. For the first time, I felt like I was with someone who truly valued me. Then, one day, Anthony sent me a desperate message. His ex had started dating someone else and didn't want to continue the Sunday tradition. Now, Anthony was lost, not knowing what to do. The irony of it all was almost comical. He prioritized that relationship so much that, in the end, he ended up alone. I replied with a simple, "You were right," and blocked his number. Over time, Ben and I built something real, and as our lives moved forward, Anthony desperately tried to get back in touch with me. He showed up at Ben's house several times, begging for a second chance. But every time I saw him, I felt a satisfying eagerness to ignore his pleas and leave him in the past, exactly where he belonged. Soon after, I found out that Anthony lost custody of Alex. His ex claimed that he wasn't emotionally stable enough to care for their son alone. Now, he was completely alone, with no family, no support. Meanwhile, Ben and I built our own Sunday traditions. No lies, no illusions. And every time I think about how Anthony ended up with nothing, I can't help but smile, knowing that, in the end, he was the only one who lost control of his own life. In the following weeks, I found myself reflecting more deeply on everything that had happened. I kept telling myself that Anthony had always been a good partner, a caring and reliable man. But no matter how much I tried to focus on the good things, the same feeling haunted me. It wasn't fair. How could it be right for him to spend weekends at his ex's house under the pretense of family time? And the moment I did something similar with Ben, I was seen as the villain. I wanted to believe that relationships were based on trust and equality, but Anthony showed me that, for him, fairness was a one-way street. At first, living with Ben seemed like a dream. I convinced myself that this new phase was exactly what I needed. Someone who understood me and knew the weight of unresolved relationships and past emotions. But little by little, that dream began to unravel. The man I thought I knew started to change. His carefree attitude became irresponsibility, and the little quirks I once found charming began to turn into exhausting demands. It all started subtly. First, he asked me to help with grocery shopping. Then we began splitting bills, and before I knew it, he was already asking to borrow money. I tried to be understanding. After all, he had just gone through a divorce, and I knew how hard that could be. But with every loan I made, I felt less like I was helping and more like I was being used. Of course, he never paid anything back. I was sinking into a situation I thought I had escaped, but in reality, I had gotten even deeper into it. One night, after a long week at work, I came home to find Ben sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, with a half-eaten pizza box on the coffee table. "We need to talk," he said casually, not even looking up. "About what?" I asked, already guessing what was coming. "Look, I know things are tight for both of us, but if you can't help anymore, I'm going to have to start charging rent." I was in shock. The man I had left everything behind for was now talking about charging me rent, as if I were just some stranger occupying his couch. I stood there, in disbelief, trying to understand how I had let things get to this point. How did I go from a stable relationship with Anthony to end up in this situation, depending on an ex who now treated me more like a tenant than someone he cared about? Meanwhile, Anthony's life seemed to be getting better and better. I saw pictures of him and Alex on social media, traveling, smiling, living a life that seemed perfect. He had regained custody of his son and was leading his own business, thriving in a way I never imagined. What hurt the most was that he didn't seem to miss me for even a second. He moved on while I was stuck in the opposite, with a man who now expected me to pay the bills. The irony of it all was almost unbearable. I left Anthony thinking I was reclaiming my freedom, only to end up here, paying someone else's bills and being treated like an unwanted guest in what should have been my fresh start. The desire to scream and cry mixed with a deep exhaustion. How did I let this happen? One day, while scrolling through my phone, I came across an old photo of me and Anthony, taken in a time when things were simple, when I believed we had a future together. I stared at the photo for a long moment, feeling a strange mix of regret and anger. I went out seeking justice, but life gave me everything except that. That same night, I decided it was long past time to leave. I began packing my things. Ben tried to argue, saying it was just a phase, that he just needed time. But I no longer had the energy to argue. I just looked at him and said, "It's over. Find someone else to pay your rent." With my suitcase in hand, I walked out the door, feeling a bitter relief. I was alone again, and this time, I knew I couldn't wait for anyone else. The truth was clearer than ever. Men don't change. Whether it was Anthony, who thrived without me, or Ben, who only saw me as a source of money, in the end, they all followed their own interests, and I was tired of being the disposable piece in someone's plan. Outside, I stopped for a moment and took a deep breath, looking at the sky. Maybe it was true. Maybe men really weren't worth it. But this time, I wasn't going to wait for another to prove that to me. From now on, I would be my own priority. And, for the first time in a long time, that idea brought me peace. After finding myself alone again, I couldn't stop thinking about how all of this was Anthony's fault. From the beginning, he was the root of all these problems. He made me believe I was in a fair and secure relationship, while hiding the truth behind his facade of a devoted father. The truth is, he never truly wanted to share his life with me. He already had his life, his ex, his son, and his precious family Sundays. I was never a priority, just a convenient figure to fill the empty space during his free time. With each passing day, the anger I felt only grew. I gave up everything for him. I tried to understand his dynamic with his ex. I accepted things that were unacceptable. And in the end, what did I get? I was left aside, emotionally betrayed by someone who pretended to be a good husband while secretly maintaining a second life with his ex. And the worst part? Now he was in a serious relationship with another woman. One who, apparently, fit perfectly into his narrative. The woman he wanted by his side to complete the image of success he was building. I found out by chance. A photo of him appeared on my social media feed, shared by a mutual friend. There was Anthony, smiling next to a radiant woman, holding hands with Alex, as if they were the perfect family. The caption, "Finally found my peace." Peace. That's what he called peace. While I struggled to rebuild myself and survive all the chaos he left behind, he moved on as if I had never existed. And that's when the unfairness of the situation became unbearable. Women like me, who fight to be independent, strong, and empowered, always end up paying the highest price. We strive to find balance in relationships, give space, be understanding. And still, we end up discarded. Meanwhile, men like Anthony move on with their lives as if nothing happened. They jump to the next relationship, ready to continue exactly where they left off, without any real consequences. The world is cruel to women like me. When a woman is empowered, she's not seen as a desirable partner. She's seen as a challenge, a problem to be solved. Anthony didn't want a partner. He wanted a woman who fit into his mold without questioning. Someone who wouldn't demand equality. Who would accept, smiling, while he played family with his ex. And now, he found exactly that. While I felt alone, trying to rebuild my shattered life, he was out there, living the idealized version of the life he never gave me the chance to have. It's a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. To see someone who hurt you prosper while you struggle to piece together the shards of your existence. And I wonder, why? Why do men like Anthony get away unscathed? Why do they manage to move on so easily, while we women are left with the emotional weight of it all? It's as if the world is programmed to reward those who break us and leave us behind. In the end, Anthony showed me that society still doesn't know how to deal with strong women. We're doomed to carry the guilt, the anger, and the suffering, while they reap the rewards of our understanding and patience. I gave everything to that man. I accepted his terms, his conditions. And still, he found happiness in someone else, while I was left to rebuild what he had destroyed. The truth is, I can't trust anymore. I tried to be someone who understood, who adapted. But the price of that was too high. Now I'm tired. Tired of trying to find justice in a world that clearly isn't fair to women like me. And maybe, finally, I'm ready to stop waiting for him, or any other man, to understand that. I don't know what the future holds for me. But one thing I know. I will never again diminish myself for anyone. If society doesn't want an empowered woman, that's their problem. I won't change. Now, it's my turn to live my way. Even if that means living alone. Because, in the end, the only person I can truly trust is myself.